Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast, and welcome back to our watch club for Star Wars: The Acolyte. Fear should not make this decision, Osha. You should. Welcome back to Watch Club. My name is Nate, and this is our Watch Club for Star Wars: The Acolyte, Episode 3. If you're joining us for the first time, this is Watch Club, our weekly review series, kind of like a book club, but way better. Keep in mind, we will be going into full spoilers for this series and Star Wars in general, so if you haven't watched this week's episode yet, be sure to do so, and then come right back in less than 12 parsecs. Now, before we eat one too many spice creams, let me introduce you to the lovely Force wielders joining me today. First up, he's the jovial jurisprudent justifier of justice. He's Justin, the Jedi lovin' for light and life, Lawrence.
Nate, I gotta say, I wasn't expecting episode 3 to be such a juicy episode, but we got flashbacks, we got witches. I am ready to talk all things spoilers around this episode. Let me tell you, man. Let me tell you.
A lot of thoughts, a lot of little mysteries popping up, but listen, I'm so excited. He's igniting his saber next to him. We've got the droidica dropping, death stick popping Darcy, the holocron historian of the High Republic Hudson.
Wow. I don't know if Jedis use death sticks. I feel like that would be against the code or something.
Yeah, doesn't Obi-Wan
don't taint your body?
Yeah, doesn't Obi-Wan swear them off?
Be a cool Jedi. Don't be one of those lame Jedis like Yord, okay? Like, pop a death stick every now and then, okay, Darcy? Jeez. How you both doing? You both excited to get into this?
Yeah, I'm excited.
Justin said flashbacks. It was one juicy flashback in encapsulated.
Yes, it was a flashback episode. Yes, exactly. My apologies, but to say that we would, to think that we would get this at episode 3, I think I'm not sure what the conversation's going to be around this episode, but I think maybe some might be thinking, oh well, I was expecting this maybe further down. I think we'll get another.
Further down, we're going to see what actually happened, I think.
This is one
perspective.
This is
like
one
perspective
thing,
thing?
right?
Yes, this is all this is all from Osha's point of view, I think.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, the Jedi are evil, or at least it seems that way. But we've got a lot to talk about. Let's get right into things, starting with our first part of the story here. Episode 3 opens up on Brendok, 16 years earlier, in a tranquil forest under a yellow bunta tree. We see Osha sitting alone. She uses the Force to hold still a flapping, butterfly-looking thing, and she lets go of it. But then it's held in the air once again, this time by her sister Mae, who's discovered her. Mae forcefully holds the creature again, and Osha yells at her, asking her why she always has to do things like that. And Mae asks Osha why she's run off to be alone. Osha admits to her that she doesn't want to do the Ascension ceremony, and Mae tells her it's just a ceremony, and they're going to do it together. It'll be all good. As they walk through the forest, Mae pushes Osha to participate in their little poem thing that we saw in the previous episode, or episode 1, and then they're found by Mother Coral, who yells at them and demands they come back, telling them there will be consequences for breaking the rules yet again. As they walk away, we see Sol peek out behind a tree, spying on them, and then we cut to the title. So let's talk about this. What did you think was the significance in sort of this sequence of action, seeing Mae holding on to that butterfly, and then, of course, looking at Osha kind of yearning to be on her own, which is that's such a classic sort of Star Wars thing, the kid who wants to get off the planet, who wants to escape their surroundings. What did you guys think about kind of this opening sequence?
I think it's cool because it really kind of sets up how they're different people. Whereas Osha was holding that creature almost out of curiosity, and then felt bad when she realized she was kind of holding it back painfully almost. Mm-hmm. We see Mae goes the opposite way and is enjoying almost that torment that the creature is experiencing. So I think it does a really good job of laying out why they're different. again with Mae being very gung-ho about this whole ritual, and then Osha's of course trepidation about going through with it and stuff like that. Again, it's just really cool how they're laying out these characters with very little interaction. We're just getting to know these two young girls, and we instantly see where they stand.
Yeah, and especially coming off of the heels of episode 2, where we do see the confrontation. We don't really fully understand who's in the right and who's in the wrong in this whole situation. And I think here it immediately sets up the two as having as you pointed out, Darcy, a difference in personality, in the way that they're able to, I guess, without them actually calling it or saying it, it's like they're wielding the force to a certain degree. I think that's very clear. It just shows in a really clear way how each of their opinions differ from one another, even though that they're twins. And I think obviously the idea of twins is that so much twins share so much, even from a personality and from a mentality standpoint. But I think what's interesting here is that they are twins, but they are really opposite of one another in terms of their outlooks and their goals. So it kind of immediately sets us up with that to kind of show us, after the events of at the end of episode 2, their relationship was always sort of estranged or not estranged, but maybe divergent from one another, and it might lead to the course of action that we see later.
Totally. And I do want to make a correction. I think last week, for the first 2 episodes, I think that I said something along the lines of Leah Brady playing both of the young girls. That is actually not true. I didn't obviously pay enough attention to realize they're actually they are twins, but they are fraternal twins. They are not identical twins, which is an interesting choice. And I know, Darcy, we talked about it offline.
Yeah.
And you were kind of confused as to why they would go with fraternal twins and not identical twins, or just maybe even the same actor. But I will say, I think both of them are doing a great job in this episode.
Yep,
and shout out to Leah and Lauren Brady.
100%. It's just confusing to have identical future selves and then fraternal past. It's just,
I think there's a couple
bit jarring at first.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple reasons to do that. I think for someone like Amanda Stenberg, she's going to be able to act off of 2 different characters, even though it's her playing it twice. Whereas I think it might be, and no shade to obviously kid actors, but I think it's going to be easier for Leah and Lauren to act off of each other because they are in that scene together, and it's less work for this kid to have to, play one side and then play the other side.
Totally.
It's probably easier in that vein to kind of have them feed off of the energy and as a director, set them up and be like, well, this is your outlook, this is who you are, this is your outlook, this is who you are, and then this is how you have to like kind of clash each other in those scenes. And as we see, there's some moments that get like a little more physical in the sense of like how they interact with one another. And I think that, again, that's just easier to probably do with 2 people with twins that they look identical. They might not necessarily represent the same identical nature of as Amanda Stenberg, and how much Mae and Osha are like so much. They're the same person, obviously. But like, it just makes sense. I think it fits, and it really does help drive this episode to set up the conflict between these 2 sisters, to have 2 of them that you can focus on.
And both of them really do look like a young Amandla. I think as far as the butterfly, I did want to just sort of call something out that I thought was kind of interesting, which is, I think this is not only showing up how they are very divergent, but also I think it kind of talks a little bit more about how this coven experiences the Force or teaches them about the Force, because I really do think that Mae and Osha are raised to believe in power. And we hear this a little bit later in the episode, but power seems to be a recurring theme. We brought it up last week with power and control, and seeing how Osha just really can't bring herself to control that little bug the same way that Mae does. I think it shows like sort of where they're at in terms of their access to the Force. Right. I think Mae leans more on power and control, which is primarily seen as more dark side. And then I think that Osha, to me, I'm getting more I guess peace and justice, but maybe even more elemental nature. If we're going off the Galaxy's Edge lightsabers that Darcy, I know you have all of them. Is that kind of, am I on the right track there? I think she's more maybe elemental nature.
Well, I was thinking that it's literally the stance of light and dark, right? And life and the nurturing of life from Osha's angle. Which I would consider more of the light and what was the saber called again, Nate?
Elemental nature or peace and justice?
Peace and justice. I feel like her approach is more peace and justice in relation to power and control, which Mae definitely symbolizes. But I think both of them, to your point, their teaching is also really rooted in elemental understandings. So I think that to say that their training and their experience with the Force is obviously much different from that of the Jedi, I think there's something that's going to be more, again, going deeper with the spiritual, but also kind of connecting with the environment as well. I'm wondering, just because it does really seem like in this moment their relationship to life and how they handle life is both different, and the butterfly symbolizing that life, right? I think that's it's sort of in a way kind of foreshadows the events that would come at the end in the way that Mae kind of approaches things. So, again, this is all just like sort of like little seasoning to kind of set up for where we would end up at the end of this episode.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I also want to shout out Soul's boy band hair. In this, like when he pokes his head out from the tree, I'm like, is this a K-pop video from the early 2000s? Like, what is going on? Just the decisions of aging and de-aging some of these characters is a little off, but no, I loved it. Okay, let's keep going here. We then head back to a fortress on a mountain, and we see the sisters being escorted by Mother Coral through the village center. They ask Mother Coral if they can have some spice creams, and Coral denies them for now, telling them they can have some after the Ascension ceremony. Mother Anastasia shows up and says, "Let them have their spice creams. My sweet girls must have sweet treats," and asks them to meet her in the common room for their training session. Anastasia speaks with Coral in private, and Coral informs her that the girls left the fortress again. And Anastasia asks if anyone saw them or if there was any sign of the visiting Jedi. Coral reminds her that their coven won't stay safe if Osha keeps running away. She tells Anastasia that they need a firm hand and says that the twins are not normal children. Before we keep going, I do want to ask each of you just your impression here. What do you think spice cream tastes like?
Because I'm picturing like a cinnamon or like
that's what I
an
am.
allspice type thing.
I'm thinking like a cinnamon with like a sort of either a whipped cream, something light, right? Not necessarily as thick as like a buttercream.
It's like a meringue with cinnamon.
Yeah, exactly.
Dusting or something like
exactly.
that.
Yeah. And very soft. But like spice makes me think, it's got a little kick to it. And the best dessert spice, I think, if you're thinking of it, is probably cinnamon. Don't come at me in the comments, but like cinnamon is. I'm not a huge cinnamon fan, but if you're gonna mix a cream with a sort of spicy dessert, it makes sense to do it with cinnamon. Yeah.
I'm just hoping that it's not the spice that we know about.
That's what I was wondering. I was like, are they getting to get fucked up? Like, are they gonna are they supposed to it's almost like how people like in certain sort of rituals and whatnot might induce like some sort of shrooms or something to help open their mind for their journey. So like, are they like doing some spice creams? And like, that's why Mae's like, yo, I want some spice
addicted
creams.
to that spice, bro. Like, that's not good. These poor girls.
No, I imagined it the way that they said spice cream is as some sort of a dessert, but
or the idea that in the Star Wars galaxy, like spice can mean more than just drugs. Like it's possible that,
or it could be but it's just a very small amount.
Like how they used to give like little kids like a little bit of alcohol,
like a microdose. It's called microdose.
Or how there used to be cocaine in Coca-Cola.
Exactly. There used to be cocaine in Coca-Cola, guys. That's why it was so addictive. Like let's
bring that back. I know that I think my favorite spice cream though would be a spice cream cake. I'd want a spice cream cake, and it would be Fudgy the Purgle, flavor would be what I would go with.
Fudgy the Purgle. Are you eating Purgles?
Fudgy the Whale.
Are you
trying to
eating?
Yeah.
You could put Purgle in it. Who knows?
That's gross.
No,
I don't know if I want to eat
I think
it.
it just be shaped. I think it'd be shaped like a cartoony Purgle.
Okay,
Yeah.
like Wookiee cookies. Like a Wookiee cookie is like shaped
Very
like a
much
Wookiee.
so.
Okay.
Very much so.
So we're talking
I'm
like
sure they've got
Right.
Wookiee cookies.
Sure, maybe they might, and maybe we'll see them. Maybe
Wookiee cookie sandwich with spice cream in the middle.
Yo, dude, I think we just came up with the next thing that they need to bring to Galaxy's Edge, right? Batsu, let's go. Let's go.
Okay. I also did want to just mention the gorgeous view that we get of this fortress as we enter into this scene. One thing that's really interesting, if you look very closely at the moons, they look just like the O's in the logo, with one being red, one
First
being
thing
blue,
I noticed,
overlapping, and I was like,
and I think that speaks more to the significance of that than we when we had talked about it. I think it might have been in previous weeks, either episode 1 or episode 2 Watch Club, but you had talked about how the O is very symbolic of like a light and dark. But after seeing this and seeing the significance, I think their home, who they are, that immediately means like that matters. This matters in an immense amount. It's just seeing those moons and the way they overlapped and being like, oh, that's from the logo or that's from the title treatment. Okay, like this is important. This is super important. I like that sort of visual touch that if you're that clued in to or tapped into what's going on and seeing all the visual iconography that's for the show, you immediately register with that and understand, okay, this is significant because it's calling back to something that is used in the marketing. Like you know what I mean? So
Again, it's just what I think is cool is the fact that this is, teasing at, again, another way to access the Force in not your typical Jedi or Sith fashion. We're going more that witchcraft Night Sister route where it is very much, again, they're a coven of witches. You can't get closer to witch magic than literally calling them witches. So
well, it's funny too. And it's funny too because they don't really, like, they kind of wait to drop that word. Right, and when they drop it, and I think it's we haven't dropped it yet.
We're gonna get to it.
Yeah,
we're actually probably just gonna get to it.
Okay, cool.
So during their training, Mother Anastasia describes how all living things are connected by the same thread. She says some call it a force and claim to use it, but what they know is that the thread isn't a power you yield. While the sisters bicker back and forth, she demonstrates the power of one, then the power of two. And then she asks the sisters to block her, which only Mae does. And Mother Coral scolds Osha, telling her she expects more from her, which is not the best way to encourage a child. Come on. It's at that point that their lesson is interrupted, and we hear a noise in the distance. Mother Coral stares longingly at some sort of big electrical machine. And in their room, then, in the next sequence, Osha admits to her mother that she isn't sure she wants to be a witch. Mae says it's what Osha wants, but Osha snaps back and says, no, it's what you want. Mother Anastasia reminds them that the thread tied them together before they were born. And the two tell each other they love each other, and Anastasia reminds them that the galaxy is not a place that welcomes women like them. She tells them that they're special, and she wants them to stay special. So let's dig into this now. Let's talk about their views on the Force. I do want to talk about potentially what that machine that Mother Coral was looking at, but let's start with their views on the Force. I think the idea of the thread is really interesting. We've heard from Night Sisters before. We've seen from Night Sisters before in live action the discussion of the Force as a thread, or the discussion of the thread.
Yes.
With the three. What are they called from Ahsoka?
The Fates.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's also Greek.
The Fates.
Yeah, it's the Greek
Fates.
mythology,
They're the Fates.
right?
Yes.
Like it's been there. We've seen it. We know it exists. I think that this might be the like. I don't think these are Night Sisters per se, but maybe they are what the earliest of the Night Sisters look like. Like, again, I think what we're very much doing by establishing this new view is that there is light, there is dark, and then there's this middle. And I think this middle is definitely filled out by these witches that use the Force in a different way, or understand the Force in a different way, as you're talking about. Now, the confrontation that you were talking about, I was kind of confused there. So Osha says to Mae, right, that this is what she wants, right? And I think that it very much draws this line in the sand for us to understand how early these two characters, Mae and Osha, really had a difference of opinion. It's going way back here. And it doesn't seem like, it seems like when she knows in her instinct, Osha that is, that this isn't what she wants, it really drives her that much more, which is clear. She's driven by this idea of not wanting to be a witch, which I think is very, significant to who her character is and what we've already seen in the first 2 episodes in this drive to seek the truth. So again, it's just that you get to see like these little, her ambition at such a young age that she still carries with her. There's just a great parallel between this young version and this older version of her that we can already see.
I just love the idea of the threads, because it made me think of Chirrut Imwe, especially when they said the Force is not something you use, something that's wielded. It's something that almost drives you. And then we see Chirrut do that with his whole, the Force is, I'm one with the Force is with me type thing, where he's letting just the Force guide him, essentially. I feel like that's almost a similar way that these witches might see it, in that the Force will act through them, but they will not use the Force type thing. And which is really cool to, again, lay out these ideas that there are other ways to access the Force. And like you said, there's that in between that isn't the Jedi or Sith. There's that gray area that we're exploring more as we get more Star Wars, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, last week when we were kind of in our early speculation mode, Justin and I, we were talking, we'd only seen the first 2 episodes, but I kind of felt like that Osha and Mae might have come from a line of Night Sisters. I do think that there's a very real possibility, especially with Mother Coral being a Zabrak, that we know the Zabrak and the Night Sisters have such a close connection. I personally, maybe I wasn't watching properly. I don't think that I saw Mother Coral's body to what we'll eventually get to, which leads me to believe that this really could be the earliest line of them. They are also wielding bows in this, which if we look at bows being wielded in Star Wars in previous history, it's with the Night Sisters. But no, I think the idea is like that math checks out. And I like the idea that we could potentially be exploring that side of things. I think, I think, like, who's the character in, why am I blanking right now with the big eye? Maz Kanata. Maz Kanata is another very earlier representation, at least in the sequel trilogy, of sort of seeing the Force in a different way. Not a Jedi, not a Sith, she's just a person who understands the Force, can experience it, and can learn from it and benefit from it. And I like the fact that we're seeing this coven of women who, I think it's really interesting too, the line where she says, like, the galaxy doesn't really take kindly to women like us. And so you can already start to see why a group or maybe a single one of them or whoever would want to hide away, much like we eventually do see with the Night Sisters.
Yeah, I think it's very much the same thing that we've seen in history with the way people looked at witches, right? And we're intimidated by them, and we're scared of what they could do. And I think that, again, you take that sort of historical element, you throw it in here, and you now no longer have just, again, a light and dark. You have something in the middle that I think can skew either way. I think the reality too is, like we said, with the Night Sisters, it's really a point of perspective in understanding which angle is light and which angle is dark, right? I you know what I mean? So again, this is all to be obviously explored further in this show, but it is really cool that they are introducing these ideas very early on, because it makes you also wonder, like, it might make sense as to why then, the Night Sisters came to be as just solely existing on Dathomir and never going anywhere, and that's where they resided. And maybe we see those 3 sisters that inevitably reach the other end of time with Purgles and stuff like that. But who knows? Who knows?
Well, I'm not really sure. Speaking of Mother Coral again, I did want to bring up that machinery that she sort of stares at longingly. Like, I mean, this whole scene of them training is interrupted by a noise that happens. And so, we've seen trailers for this show, and I've seen a trailer that features, imagery from this time period that isn't what we've seen in this episode. So we're definitely going back again. We're definitely going to get another flashback. I guess I just don't understand how that big Wookiee could have snuck in there without them noticing, because, like, to me, in this episode, we see him sort of, like, working on something. Like, I think he's the crew's mechanic. I know they're all Jedi, but I feel like he might be their mechanic. And so the idea of, like, some machinery going awry, to me, feels like he was up to something. Shout out to Kelnaka. I love Kelnaka, at least so far. But obviously something's going on with these Jedi. Something is going on that is they keep wanting to cut away to in this episode. And it's just like, I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but it's there has to be a reason that fire exploded so much.
Sure. Right? Like maybe it was sabotaged in a way or something like that. I think the one thing that's interesting, and we were talking about it in the last Watch Club, is that, like, I think as much as the Jedi have always been seen as, like, heroes, like, this is a series that definitely depicts them as, like, conflicted. Right? And, rightfully so, as Darcy was mentioning in the spoiler free, like, with the High Republic stories being kind of like the beginning of the downfall of the Jedi, we're supposed to see these cracks. We're supposed to see these things that, as an audience member, what we knew of the Jedi is immediately being challenged in a lot of ways. And from episode 1 to here, like, the Jedi just look really suspicious, right? And in a lot of ways, you could say, maybe as a theory, that, to your point, maybe there was a sense of sabotage that was going on and trying to eliminate this fraction of Force users that could inevitably challenge the bigger the peace that the Jedi are so hungry to protect, right? It's there could be a motive in why things could have gotten a little crazy, right? And that fire just friggin' spread like crazy. Like, it was mad.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea. Again, I'm hoping that we definitely will be going back to this time and figuring out what happens, but as to how this happened, what that machinery represents and what it means,
what it
to
does.
this
Is
coven,
it how they make spice cream? Is that
is it something as simple as that, or is it something to do with, again, what we hear later on in the episode with between the two mothers talking, where that other bomb dropped? Does it have something to do with that later on?
Oh,
so, like, that's where I'm.
Okay.
Again, it's very hard to tell with this magic science crossover, because we see that they kind of go hand in hand in Star Wars. So,
and it's interesting because we know about different areas of the dark side and its capabilities from what we've heard. That famous speech with Palpatine that I brought up last week, of course, the ability to keep someone from dying. That's how he says it. But I did want to just sort of, I kind of like where we're digging into here, because the Jedi, especially at this time, there's a lot of remarks, and a lot of people are talking about this show and talking about the Jedi and talking about them as if they're a religion, which they are, right? And a lot of religions are very much, well, you do it our way, or you don't do it at all. You are wrong. And so, to your point, Justin, of them being witches, they might be tapping into different areas of the dark side. And one thing that really sort of stood out to me was there's a sequence, and it's very brief, and it's between these two moments. It's between the training sequence and the scene with Osha, Mae, and their mother in their room, where these witches are walking up to where the ascension ceremony will take place, and they're staring down a deep, dark hole, and they're chanting. And then just to the ledge of the mountain is a triangle-like structure. And to me, I'm like, okay, triangles, Sith holocron, Sith wayfinder. Like, I know I keep going back to Galaxy's Edge. Maybe I just need to go back to Galaxy's Edge, hopefully sooner than later.
No, but in Rebels, the fortress that they travel to is a pyramid structure,
right? And the Sith love triangles, bro.
Yeah, it's a symbol of the Sith.
It's the strongest shape.
Yep.
Yeah, it's the strongest shape.
Yeah, because even on Exegol, isn't it a giant pyramid that's like floating?
I would have to rewatch that sequence, but potentially, yeah. I mean,
or are you just thinking of where Vader fights Ahsoka?
Maybe I'm thinking of that, but
like pyramid as well.
Yeah, but that was Rebels. But like, anyways, triangles are obviously are super integral to the symbolism of the Sith. So I think that's absolutely fair. To say that makes sense that could be there. So,
and maybe it is more of a symbolism within dark side and not just the Sith. It's something the Sith utilize, just like the way these witches utilize this magic. But maybe it's not necessarily. Again, the Jedi, all we've ever heard from how the Force works is from one side of things, right? So to kind of come in and see it from this new perspective is so intriguing.
But I think a lot of the dichotomy and the conversation around who's right and who's wrong has happened because there is so much of that, right? There is so much of this, like, opinions of the Jedi, opinions of the Sith and the dark side. And that's why the sequel trilogy tried to tap into it, but not successfully, in kind of establishing more of a question around the idea of light and dark and the Force and how it's something outside of it. The Jedi and the Sith are more of a belief system, right? Mm-hmm. And the Force is the thing that kind of is their tool, and it's the thing that everyone should kind of sort of have access to. There's no sense of ascension or royalty to it. It's not just because you're a Skywalker, you're a Jedi, right? The Force is something that is around everyone, and those who can tap into it, if they choose to go down the path of being a Jedi and take the teachings, they are a Jedi. Or if they go down the path of being, on the dark side and they go down that path, it's, they're Sith. But then now there's this with magic and witches, and looking at the Force is not something that you wield. You know what I mean? It's interesting. So
yeah, man. Speaking of interesting, this next section is very interesting, and I'm excited to hear because Darcy, as soon as this episode came out, we were talking off air, and I'm like, shut up, I don't want you to let's save it for the recording because I want to hear what you have to say. So let's talk about it. The sisters are being prepared for the Ascension ceremony, and they argue how Osha doesn't want to be the same as Mae. How she wonders what's beyond Brendok. The Ascension ceremony begins as the two moons are high in the sky. The witches begin their chant and breathing in synchronization. Mother Anastasia preaches that they haven't performed this ceremony since their exile. She calls forth the twins and begins the ceremony, but only Maeho Anastasia completes her vow and receives her mark. However, her sister, Varosha, isn't able to complete her vow, and the ceremony is interrupted by the Jedi. Indara, Sol, Torben, and Kalnaka arrive. The sisters are discovered, and Sol asks who their father was. Anastasia says, there was no father. He asks Osha if she wants to be tested. Mother Anastasia forces Torben to his knees, and his eyes go black. She suggests that the Jedi leave, but Osha asks her if she can take the test. She gives her the puppy dog eyes. And it's decided that both girls will be tested, and Anastasia agrees, sending them on their way. In a meeting with Anastasia's advisors, Coral argues that the girls are not to be tested, saying she carried them, and Anastasia says, I created them. Elder Nasa suggests that they have the girls lie so that they'll fail their tests. So we've heard this before, right? There was no father. I carried him. Whatever she said, whatever Anakin's mom says. I raised him. I carried. Darcy, what did you think of the Ascension ceremony, and more importantly, how do you think these girls were created?
Well, I mean, the Ascension ceremony in itself is really interesting because I think the quote you used at the top of the episode with "you shouldn't let fear make the decision, you should make the decision" is makes you think they are more about the balance in the Force than there is dark side leaning, because it is, again, fear is a tool of the dark side. You'd think that they would respect that a bit more than just saying don't listen to your fear, do what you want.
I like that,
which I think is really cool. But on the topic of where the girls came from, I think, again, this is clearly how we're going to get Plagueis, however you want to say his name. I know there's multiple sayings. It's Star Wars. You can say every name differently, apparently. But I think that's why he's definitely interested. Like, if the Jedi were aware of this coven, who's to say that Plagueis or his master or whoever is the Sith at this time isn't aware of it and interested in this power that they're using to create life? Like, again, that is the most important thing that came out of this, because it's connecting us back to that Skywalker trilogy and seeing how maybe Anakin came about as a result of the dark side, or at least the Sith using this technology to their advantage. And it's just, I'm wondering, like, maybe that's where Mae was saved, was the dark side or the Sith, wielder coming to Brendok after the fire and pulling her out of the wreckage type thing. Because I think that would be really cool to set up, both sisters going on divergent paths again, using the power and fear, and then going to the light side with the Jedi. But again, this is the most important thing that came out of this episode. It's the whole meat of this series, I think, is how did these girls come to be, and what are they going to do? Are they a dyad, or are they even more than a dyad? What's going on with them?
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because we literally watched the first time we ever saw anything from this show in a more extensive view than at Star Wars Celebration was seeing the first scene from Episode 1 after watching The Phantom Menace. And of course, this moment bringing up, Shmi Skywalker, and I did actually write it down. There was no father. I carried him. I raised him. But the idea that Anastasia created them, but Mother Coral raised them is interesting. I think it's kind of intriguing how is this possibly, like you're saying, Darcy, is this what inspires the creation of Anakin Skywalker, right? And it's just really intriguing to sort of see, are they going to be able to connect those things together? Because that is one mystery in Star Wars that they've never explained, tapped into, thought about, really given any credence to. So the parallels here, and the fact that this is being so tied in the marketing and just with what we've seen to the Phantom Menace, it's just really, really intriguing. I'm stoked for this.
I think the use of the prequels, it's just self-serving, right? Like, they're doing a show that's going to predate the prequels, yet you have the 25th anniversary, so you can kind of use the two to market. I don't know if I would read too far into it, but I think the theory of the idea of, like, as you said, using the Force to maybe birth or create life, if these Night Sisters, and I use air quotes around that because we don't know, but if this covenant is dabbling in that sort of use of the Force, it might make them a threat to both sides. And that might be the reason why someone like Darth Plagueis, or Pelagius, whatever you want to call him. No, just Darth Plagueis.
Say Plagueis, sure.
Yeah, Darth Plagueis. I was being sarcastic, by the way. Darth Plagueis, why he's so interested in that. So he could then think for himself that he could covet and bring about his own apprentice that would continue his work, right? And very much be a product of himself in a way. And I don't think that it's unlikely that we would get some sort of, I know in the comics they at least hinted at the fact that Palpatine used that ability to create Anakin. And like, again, that's the comics. I know that they're very close and thing, but some people have said that it's not necessarily true. But I think it goes without saying that if they're playing with it here, right, it would inform and maybe explain how Shmi was there was no father, right? That maybe it was Palpatine all along. If they can create that thread or that pattern of how it inevitably got to Palpatine, it would make sense that he was the one that put it out there and created Anakin.
Absolutely, yeah. I do want to shout out Michael Abels for the music in this sequence. I think it's always cool to hear diegetic music in Star Wars. Like, the moment that I'm like, oh, they're singing the song that we're hearing, but it's part of the score, and it's, like in Solo when we hear the Imperial March being played on the loudspeakers. This sequence, this breathing that they're doing, it adds to the emotion of the scene. It's a little scary. It's also a little empowering and hopeful at the same time, which is really, really cool. And I don't know, I wanted to shout out Michael Abels because this is the first time in at least these first 3 episodes where I'm kind of like, okay, that was pretty sick. Like, more of that, please. But yeah, okay, let's keep on moving on here. The girls start their testing, and Mae seems to fail with flying colors. So much so, she fails so quickly that I didn't realize that she had already gone. Because they were like, Mae's going to go first, and then Osha goes in. I'm like, wait, is that Osha or Mae? And again, I couldn't tell them apart. But Mae fails with flying colors, and then Osha takes the test, and she can't lie, even though she promised she would. She tells Sol that she wants to be a Jedi. Later, Mae is angered by this and has to be taken away by Mother Coral. Osha sits down with Mother Anastasia, who tells her that if she wants to pull the thread, then pull it. Osha fears that she'll never see her mother again, but Anastasia tells her, fear should not make this decision, you should. They tell each other that they love each other, and then Osha goes and packs up her stuff. Let's quickly, the Jedi training. What did you think of the Jedi training and Mother Anastasia's decision to let Osha be a Jedi?
Well, it feels pretty standard in terms of Jedi training.
Yeah.
You know, things show up on a monitor and they have to
ship.
guess what it is. I'm like,
Yeah.
a ship. I'm like, this is how they're testing him. This is how they're going to test him. And his anyways, it to harken back to that and whatnot, it made sense. But I like how Sol kind of caught her in her lie, Osha, and you know, pointed out that, you know, obviously this is something that she wants, which obviously gives her drive to want to go do that. So I like that. And you can start to see that bond between Sol and Osha kind of start, right? Where he can see through her and he recognizes her honesty, even though she doesn't, right? So, and I think that's telling us from the previous episode in episode 2 and how, you know, they were handling the situation of who's going to confront Mae, right? And he recognizes that she hasn't gotten over it. She says she has, but there's so much that she's still holding on to. So yeah, again, you can see the early beginnings of their relationship.
I just think it's cool because before Osha goes in, you see her, you know, she walks over to Kelnaka as he's working on the speeder, and you can kind of see her interest, and that's almost where her why she became a mechanic came from, or at least where it started, was her interest in this, you know, it's working on vehicles and stuff like that, what I thought was really cool. But yeah, the training just took me back to when they're testing Anakin in the prequels again, or it's just the same thing basically, and it
hasn't
just
changed in 100 years. That's great.
You know, I guess it's a great base.
It's
a great baseline.
Sure, and not only that, that might have been one of the last times, or no, like I guess that period of time is probably where it started to go away, where they were testing kids on screens and stuff like that. But like, you know, it makes sense that it would be there 100 years, you know, later in the Jedi Council as a means to an end.
My whole thing is how willing the Jedi seem to let these 8-year-old girls join the order.
Yeah,
we see them later on that they're all about the youngins. They take them young, like 3 and under is where they draw the line, basically.
Yeah, but they probably want them for a reason, which is the whole. Yes, I'm
wondering
parts.
if maybe this outcome between these twins and the fallout is what leads them to be like, after a certain age, we don't take them because it's just no good. They're
really you think that this is where the Jedi are like, remember Osha and Mae? Yeah, never doing that.
No more 8-year-olds. They gotta be like 4.
No more 8-year-olds with no dad type thing. Like,
there's like a chapter in a book somewhere in like the library of like their whole story and like how you learn from the lesson to be learned from her. Yeah, maybe. That's interesting. I could see that.
I like that the first thing Osha, when she gets in there, the first thing she asks about is Torben's lightsaber, and it's like she's so like, oh, do I get one of those? And it's another element that sort of adds to the allure of the Jedi. It's funny because like when we look at stuff, like obviously you've got, I already mentioned it, massive lightsaber collection. We all love lightsabers. Who doesn't love a lightsaber? But it is kind of funny that it's like, even for kids in the Star Wars galaxy, it's like, oh, that's so sick. I want a lightsaber.
Well, especially at a time where all the Jedi, how widespread the Jedi are. They're on every planet, at least in the Republic, and they have an outpost. So, like, kids know about them at this time, and they look up to Jedi, which is really cool.
Well, that's another interesting thing, though, because Anastasia probably taught her daughters about the Jedi. I'm sure Coral probably wouldn't have wanted to teach them anything like that, given her stance on the whole situation. But I think it's interesting to sort of see, like, no. Mae and Osha have a previous understanding of the Jedi, probably even before Sol and the other Jedi got there. They were being taught about it. I mean, we do even see in the journal, I know we haven't gotten there yet, but we see the Jedi symbol that Mae is sketching out. So
Osha.
It's interesting to, Osha is sketching out. I always get them mixed up.
You've done it like 4 times.
but I think it's interesting, and I also think that moment where she says, I want to be a Jedi, and he says, then you must have the courage to tell the truth. And I think that's such a wonderful foreshadow into hopefully what we get to learn more about is the fact that these Jedi aren't telling the truth, right, in the main storyline. So I think it's going to be interesting to sort of see how it continuously feels, and we've already sort of seen this in the first 2 episodes, that Sol really does feel like, I mean, even the sequence that we talked about last week with the fire, the little girl seeing fire. It's like, yeah, that's Sol's internal struggle that he's struggling with, continuing because he didn't tell the truth. He doesn't have the courage to tell the truth. So I really like that. I like that little line. I know it's a very simple matter of foreshadowing, but I thought it was really well written.
I think it's also just to even in the relationship to understand, what the mother says to Osha, that fear should not be the deciding factor in making this decision. It's how they view this their sort of the religion, right, around the Force and whatnot. So, obviously a Jedi is going to say, you tell the truth and you be a good person because that is the way of the Jedi, right? Like that makes sense, right? So, whereas, as you pointed out, Darcy, with the way the mother addresses, fear should not be that, you should want to. It's the idea of the balance, that they're both there. You have to accept it, but you have to understand which one is pulling you in what direction, and not to let either be the drive, but to understand both sides. It's I think, again, it just shows the dichotomy between these different belief systems that we have at play within this time of the Star Wars galaxy.
And I do want to shout out Kalnaka, because, we've talked about, Chewie is the original. He's the original flavor, always going to be cool. We saw some of Chewie's relatives in Revenge of the Sith. They look kind of neat. They had, gray spots and stuff. Kind of cool seeing other Wookiees. Kersantin is a great design for a Wookiee. Very different, very mean looking. But Kalnaka, seeing a Wookiee Jedi, cool, but a Wookiee with a shaved head, he's got shaved sides of his head with tattoos in them. I'm like, Darcy, shave the sides of your head right now and tattoo them because you would look awesome.
I don't know if I could go Jedi Wookiee. I already get Wookiee walking around Galaxy's Edge. I think I'll stop there.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, listen, we've got one more sequence here, and then we've been predicting this entire time, so it seems silly to talk about our predictions, but I do want to get to that sequence, so let's talk about it. Osha's interrupted by Mae, who's incredibly upset. Mae steals Osha's journal and locks her in her room, saying she won't let her leave and that she'll kill her, which is a weird way to want to keep your sister with you. But okay. Mae grabs a nearby torch and lights the journal on fire and then throws the torch, causing a massive fire. The fire rips through the entire fortress, causing multiple explosions. Sol runs in to find Osha and Mae on a broken bridge. The bridge collapses even more, and Mae falls while Sol manages to save Osha. The Jedi, along with Osha, manage to escape the fortress as it burns. Osha wakes up on the ship, and Sol explains what happened, and that if she wishes, she will be trained as his Padawan. And then finally, we see Mae standing under the Bunta tree alone as she calls out Osha's name, and the episode ends. So I know we kind of already brought it up, and this might be, a little bit of repeat here, but let's talk about this ending, this massive fire, the death of maybe everyone, and I was going to ask, how do you think Mae survived? Justin, do you agree with Darcy that you think it might have been maybe this dark master that did rescue her at that time, or is this someone else, or did she just survive on her own?
I think it's more likely that she survived on her own, or maybe someone might have come and saved her. Maybe they're not all dead. That part is still yet to be seen. But I think what's clear is the way the events unfold and what we've kind of been dancing around is that there's more to this story that we haven't seen yet. Yeah. And that this is only one angle or one side. The way things kind of get really hectic and fast towards the end, I feel like we're missing pieces, and there's probably elements there that are driving Mae to seek revenge. I think something has happened there, and whether someone else sabotaged and then blamed the Jedi so that it could drive Mae, or it was actually the Jedi that had to sabotage this, and they did it out of a means to protect the Force, to protect the future of Jedi, and the what was happening there was like thought as unnatural by the Jedi, so they had to eliminate that, but in a very discreet way. And maybe Mae has been made aware of that, which is driving her revenge, which is pushing her, and maybe that's the angle we need to see. I think that's the story that the next time we might come back to this point is at that point of when Mae survives and how she goes about doing that, and what she's learned all those years, and who was there at the time to save her.
Well, Darcy, what do you, just for my own hubris, I have to keep the name of our prediction segment going. What do you foresee happening next?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure if you guys caught it, but Torben, before the fire, didn't have the scar, and that one brief glimpse you get of him in the back of the ship,
scarred up.
He's scarred up and stuff. So something has happened there. Also, I think we've established that Torben had a worse 16 years than Obi-Wan, because when we see him in the future timeline, his hairline is gone. He's a haggard-looking man. He is a shell of his former self, I must say. Poor Padawan Torben. But yeah, again, we definitely are going to get more the other side of the story. This is more Osha's point of view, and I think we're going to see Mae's side at some point, and that will bring to light why she's so vindictive against these Jedi. And
cool.
Clearly something happened. Again, Torben wouldn't just get that scar from a fire. There was a fight must have broken out amongst the witches and everything like that, because those bodies weren't burnt. You didn't see many wounds on them, but they weren't burnt. So it wasn't the fire that killed them. It was something else. And was it the Jedi? Was it something else? The Jedi came in and were blamed, like you said, Justin. I don't know, but something happened, and it is a understandable reason why Mae is doing what she's doing now.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it has to do with just how fragmented the ending is, and how quickly, like you said, the fire just blew up, and and suddenly we're just running through, and then Mae's at the bridge, and Osha's at the bridge, and it's like, oh, and then it just ends, right? So there's there's a point there that I think we're going to come back in between all of that when the fire breaks out and stuff kind of happens to then Mae's survival beyond that. Or at least I hope that's what we get, but it just feels like there's more to this, and very much like we're looking at different point of views, from the Jedi to these night sisters, potential witches or whatever, and the Sith. They're just different point of views. So I think that we need, Mae's point of view on this situation to help kind of fill out, the character's reasoning for what she's doing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to lie. A lot of what I had written down to mention about this part of what I foresee happening, you just mentioned. So that's great. I will say I did mention last week with episode 2 how I thought that Mae might have known Soul really well based on her reaction of when he calls out her name in episode 2 and she turns around, she's got her tears in her eyes. I think that is not the case, but I think the idea is knowing how much he means to Osha and how it reminds her of her sadness of that moment. That's where those tears had come from. And so it's not really that she had developed a personal relationship with Soul, but more so that it's like it took her right
for
back.
Sure.
Yeah,
she was definitely saving him for last.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, yeah, he's the one who basically stole her sister, as far as she's concerned. He's the one who kind of tempted her to go to the Jedi, basically.
Correct. And led to the actions, because at that point, as we remember, Mae thinks that Osha's dead, right? So she doesn't know the significance that actually Soul means to Osha and the life that she
more
had.
just he's the guy who caused all this to happen.
And it was she was the one that basically pushed her to, seek the Jedi and kind of go that way, inevitably.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that is it for this watch club. I do want to get to maybe just some overall thoughts on the episode in terms of like the episode's quality and as an episode. So, we're not going to do a rating like we have done in previous watch clubs. We're just going to kind of give our final thoughts and wrap things up. Darcy, why don't you kick us off?
I love this episode. This is the best episode of the series yet. It's laying out those seeds for this greater mystery that makes you want to find out, again, where are these girls coming from? What happened? Why are these 4 Jedi not as, righteous as they might seem? Like, what are they hiding? That is the biggest thing that came from this episode. And this is the one that will keep me watching this show because, as I said in the spoiler free, this show is all about painting that gray area of who do you trust, who's in the right, who is the good guy in this story. And this episode, again, lays the perfect foundation for you to understand why that is such an important story to explore. So again, I loved it.
Cool. Justin.
Yeah, I think based on my feelings from last week's first 2 episodes, I had some problems with some of the pacing and the way things were kind of moving through both of those episodes. But this episode definitely comes in swinging with all the legwork that those first 2 episodes helped set up. It just made it sort of very seamless in a lot of ways. It establishes the characters and so on and so forth, the timeline, the dispute, the relationships between the characters. And then here you have episode 3 that, again, I was surprised that we were going back. We were going to see this. We knew we were going to. We just, at episode 3, I wasn't anticipating it. But I welcome it and I appreciate it. But I also think there's more to see. So I'm waiting for that. But that said, I think that this really does get the ball rolling. I totally agree with Darcy. I think this is the best episode of the 3 thus far. And because it does really, get the ball rolling for more intrigue around this mystery. We've seen the history. We understand aspects of the story. But to Darcy's point, this whole show is meant to give you difference of opinion and outlook on the Force. The thing that that binds everyone. There's all of these different opinions. And I think we need to take into account that, Leslie Headland said quite openly that what interested her in doing something within Star Wars was focusing on the Sith. And I think that this is very much a show that is meant to feed into how the Sith came to be, the Empire, inevitably. And this is small amounts of work. And I think that even in here, in this episode, we see the early unearthings of Sith happening with these, again, I use air quotes, Night Sisters, but witches, mothers. They are a symbol of something that is unnatural in the Jedi's mind of how to use the Force, which is, again, going back to Palpatine's line in Revenge of the Sith. So, yeah, I think this is a great episode. I thought it was a lot of fun, better than the previous 2, for sure.
Yeah, I think this is also my favorite so far. I think I was, like you were saying, Justin, I was stoked to get this so quickly after 2 episodes. I do think there's a chance that some people might not feel the same way, in the sense of, like, that second episode with Kelnaka just sort of ending, and then it's like, okay, let's I know there's a lot of people that will want to keep the story going and not look back necessarily just yet. So it'll be interesting to sort of see, I kind of haven't really read anything yet as to how other people feel, but I think this is an episode that just adds so much more to the mystery. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors, as we've been talking about. This coven of witches practicing what they believe, and their version of the Force, I think, continues to open up the dialogue on the light side and dark side of the Force. It's not good, it's not bad, it's how you use it, and it can be used for good or evil. I think the performances from both Laura and Leah were great as well. I mean, again, I think
they carried it.
Yeah, for sure. I think some of the moments are a little bit of that Star Wars cheese, but they're 8 years old. They're 8-year-olds. They want to eat spice creams. Let them have fun. Let them eat spice creams, and let them
wizard man.
Yeah,
at least none of them said that.
that's true. At least none of them said that it was wizard. But someone who was wizard or witch, Mother Anastasia, I think Jodie Turner-Smith was
incredible.
Fantastic in this episode. I think she was so warm. Her presence on screen was just very again, she felt
warm, eh?
I thought so. I thought because I thought that she felt very motherly, and then there was that moment where she forces Torben to his knees, and I was like, "Holy crap, she's scary!" Like she's very much a protective mom, and protective moms can be warm, and they can also be scary. I think this music, the music in this episode, again, was awesome at the Ascension ceremony. So yeah, I think I hope that we've gotten some answers that to questions that we had. I hope that we get more answers to these questions that we have coming out of this sooner than later. But I'm digging the mystery of it all, and so yeah, I think even if this series isn't fully hitting that mature tone that I know that I kind of really wanted, I really dig.
You just want to feel like a big boy in Star Wars, right? Like you just want to feel like a big boy in Star Wars, and it's not like wizard and pod racers and stuff. No, I get you. But I think again, it's working to the advantage. Like again, Andor was so refreshingly different because it really stepped outside of the Star Wars genre, but kept other things that were more important to Star Wars in play. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, a lot of people could see that being so outside of the bubble of Star Wars that it's different from the conventional. At least what Leslie's doing here, and I think it's again applauding her and just the fans behind this series. They're able to find ways to kind of keep both at play, but it's just a matter of how they weave it together. Because I do agree that at times it can be a little, jarring is the word that we'll use, where it's kind of like you're going from, a really serious dark moment to suddenly, some Star Wars camp.
Yeah. Well, I will say my expectations are fully set for Skeleton Crew. I remember, Darcy, when we saw those little kids in the cast come up on stage and say, like, they remember when they got their first onesie that was Star Wars themed or something. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. All right. I know where we're going with that. I know to be prepared for the most Star Wars camp and cheese and Amblin Star Wars. Sure, that's fine with me. So yeah, again, I'd like to see this get a little closer to the marketing, but we will have to wait and see. That is it for this week's episode of Watch Club for Star Wars: The Acolyte. We hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, make sure to subscribe to us wherever you like to listen to podcasts, if you haven't already. And if you want to write into the show with your thoughts or your predictions on the shows we cover in Watch Club, well, you don't have to set your fortress on fire in an attempt to keep your family with you while losing all of them in the process. Instead, Darcy, can you let the acolytes, our lovely acolytes, know how they can reach us by holomessage?
Of course. They can reach us by holomessage at wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. That's wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. Or if that's too old school for you and you're a bit more New Republic, you can go reach out to us on Twitter at GeekcentricYT or on Instagram at wearegeekcentric.
And if you're more High Republic, you can reach out to us on Threads. No, I'm just kidding. Although I guess Mother Anastasia would use Threads. Like, they probably exclusively use Threads. We also have a Discord that you can use join using the link in our description. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode. So come talk to us about that. We want to know your theories. Who is the Dark Master? What is this coven of witches all about? How did Mae and Osha come to be? How do they exist? Keep in mind, we have a ton of other great episodes covering the latest in movies and TV shows, including our recent spoiler-filled review for the final episode of X-Men 97. We also have our spoiler-free reviews for Inside Out 2, The Boys Season 4, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, Doctor Who, Star Wars Tales of the Empire, and The Fall Guy. We also have some great interviews out now, like our most recent interview. If you're into this show, you might want to check out this interview where I had the chance to sit down with Amandla Stenberg, Mae and Osha themselves, as well as Manny Jacinto, who plays Chimere. We talked about, who their Star Wars person is. We talked about Canadian dentistry came up at one point, as well as fashion and Star Wars fashion, and what costume they'd like to rock to the Met Gala. So definitely check out that interview and all of our interviews, both here on your podcast service of choice or over on YouTube at youtube.com/Geekcentric. Leave us a review, a like, a comment goes a long way. Subscribe. The Hot Geek Summer is going to continue. We've got some hot, sweaty, geeky stuff coming real soon. It's going to be, you're going to want a spice cream after you hear what we've got coming. So definitely subscribe. Justin, Darcy, thank you so much for joining me for this Watch Club. And as we say, you're with me.
And I'm with you.
Always one.
But born as two.